Beneath the sands of Luxor, scientists found something that was perhaps never meant to be found. Over 1,000 decorated stone blocks that belonged to the ruined temple of a woman pharaoh. It got us thinking, why was this temple so brutally destroyed, and who was this woman? Her name is Hatshepsut, and she is now considered one of Egypt's greatest pharaohs, but for a long time, history almost forgot her. She ruled during the 18th dynasty, from around 1479 to 1458 BCE. She's remembered for her ambitious building projects, successful military campaigns, and flourishing trade expeditions. It turns out she was one out of 4 women to take the title of pharaoh in Egyptian history. The next woman would have to wait for 1,500 years to reign, and that woman we know as Cleopatra. The story of how Hatshepsut got to be a pharaoh is the most colorful part of this tale. As far as most dynastic rules go, it's usually men that are first in line for royal thrones. In Egypt, that was the same. That's why, when Pharaoh Thutmose I had a daughter as his firstborn, that was a big no-no as far as his succession line went. A few years later, Pharaoh Thutmose I passes away. The crown passed to Thutmose II, who ruled briefly, only to leave the throne to his infant son, Thutmose III. In this scenario, Hatshepsut was this pharaoh's stepmother. So what happened was that Hatshepsut served as advisor to her stepson, since he was too young to rule on his own. But after 7 years, she made an unprecedented move. She decided to seize power and declared herself Pharaoh of Egypt. Now this was not a simple power grab. Hatshepsut understood that if she wanted to rule, she had to present herself as a legitimate king. In a bold move, she adopted the full royal regalia, including the false beard traditionally worn by male pharaohs. She was often depicted in statues and hieroglyphs as a man, wearing the pharaoh's kilt and headdress. But this wasn't about disguising herself. Experts believe she never tried to hide her identity. Inscriptions on her statues often included feminine titles, like Daughter of Re, or grammatical structures that combined male and female terms, such as His Majesty herself. This showed that while she adopted traditional symbols of kings, she still acknowledged her true gender. But she needed to go even further. To legitimize her rule, she crafted an elaborate origin story. She claimed that the deity Amun himself had visited her mother in the form of her father, Thutmose I, and that she was his divine daughter. Now this was no small claim, since pharaohs were seen as deities on earth. By aligning herself with Amun, she strengthened her right to the throne. In temple carvings, she depicted this divine birth with Amun, presenting her as his rightful heir. These narratives weren't just mythology, they were tools, ensuring her position remained unchallenged. Hatshepsut also took a new name, Ma'at Kari, which translates roughly to "Truth is the soul of the sun god." The word Ma'at was central to Egyptian beliefs. It represented order, justice, and divine balance. Pharaohs were expected to uphold Ma'at to ensure Egypt's stability. By calling herself Ma'at Kari, Hatshepsut was likely reinforcing that she was a legitimate and rightful ruler. Her reign was truly great. She led Egypt into an era of peace and prosperity, launching massive building projects and restoring temples across the kingdom. Her most famous achievement was the construction of her temple at Deir el-Bahari, a pretty impressive architectural masterpiece carved into the cliffs of Luxor. Hatshepsut initiated one of the most ambitious construction projects in ancient Egyptian history, commissioning monuments, temples, and obelisks to immortalize her reign. It's argued that she continued with the construction of the Avenue of the Sphinxes, a grand road lined with statues leading to the Karnak Temple. For many, her shining architectural achievement was the towering obelisk she had carved from single pieces of granite. One of these, weighing over 320 tons, still stands today. Now, beyond building, she expanded Egypt's influence through trade. She sent an expedition to the mysterious land of Punt, believed to be modern-day Somalia or Eritrea, bringing back riches like gold, ivory, and exotic animals. Her fleet of ships sailing the Red Sea marked the first recorded trade mission of its kind, establishing economic ties that would benefit Egypt for generations. Yet, for all of her success, something strange happened after Hatshepsut passed away. Her successor, aka her stepson Thutmose III, who had been overshadowed by her rule, took a drastic step. He ordered her name to be erased from history. Her statues were defaced, her inscriptions chiseled away, and her achievements credited to other rulers. It was as if she had never existed. Some believe Thutmose III wanted to reclaim his rightful place as pharaoh, while others suggest that later rulers, uncomfortable with the idea of a female pharaoh, sought to restore traditional male dominance. The story gets even more tragic. The power struggle between stepmother and stepson continues, since, even after her passing away, Thutmose III built his own temple right next to Hatshepsut's at the Valley of the Kings. But he built his temple with one deliberate modification. His monument was built 11 feet higher than hers. Mind you that this was no accident, it was a symbolic statement. He wanted to overshadow her legacy. But history had other plans. Hatshepsut's legacy started to be rediscovered in the 19th century, and it was only through careful archaeological investigation that her reign was properly recognized. Today, Hatshepsut is remembered as one of Egypt's greatest pharaohs. Her reign, once erased, has been reconstructed through constant archaeological discoveries, proving that her power and influence could not be so easily forgotten. Her resting place had been hidden in plain sight, her body removed from its original chamber in an effort to erase her from history. This final piece of evidence cemented her legacy, proving that even attempts to erase a pharaoh could not really do it. Hatshepsut's grand temple, Djeser-Djeseru, was a stunning architectural feat, designed to immortalize her reign and solidify her divine connection to Amun. But after her death, her successor, Thutmose III, launched that calculated effort to erase her legacy, and parts of her temple were dismantled. Historians still debate why. Was it a dynastic power move, an attempt to restore traditional male rule, or a bid to strengthen Thutmose III's claim to the throne? Maybe he was just a jerk. Whatever the reason, the destruction wasn't immediate. It happened decades after her death, suggesting it might not have been a personal revenge but a broader political strategy. Yet, despite these efforts, her temple endures, and so does her story, a defiant echo of Egypt's first great female pharaoh. Let's travel through space and time to another place. Dashur, Egypt, is known to be home to several resting places of people from ancient Egypt. In the year 2017, scientists uncovered a long-lost pyramid. They quickly called the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities because they suspected it was going to be a big deal. Unlike most pyramids that were found in the area, this one was completely sealed. Lifting the capstone was a delicate process. When they finally managed to open the pyramid, they expected to find an undisturbed chamber. Instead, it was chaos. The place had been looted, and the personal items of the person that had passed away were scattered all over. But in the middle of the wreckage, they found a chest. Using the latest scanning technology, they managed to read the damaged hieroglyphs on its surface. What they found was unbelievable. The name inscribed there was as clear as day: Princess Hatshepsut. Ooh. The discovery made in 2017 also opened up a lot of questions. After further analysis, scientists discovered the remains belonged to another Hatshepsut. It belonged to a princess that lived during Egypt's 13th dynasty. The fact that her resting place had been looted before it was sealed made scientists wonder, were these ancient people trying to hide something about this public figure? And why is there almost no record about her in ancient Egyptian history? Ooh, stay tuned. Egyptian archaeologists made an extraordinary discovery near Cairo just recently. Drumroll, please. The most ancient and most complete mummy yet discovered in the country. Yes, they were keeping it under wraps. The 4,300-year-old mummy was found in a group of tombs close to the step pyramid of Djoser, dating back to the Egyptian Old Kingdom. It was covered in layers of gold. The team also found several other tombs, including one belonging to an ancient Egyptian official and another belonging to a secret keeper who had the power to perform special ceremonies. Another interesting tomb was that of a writer, which featured the largest statues ever found in the area. This vast burial site is also home to more than a dozen pyramids and resting grounds. Probably one of the most famous mummies in the world is that of Hatshepsut. She ruled Egypt like a boss for around 20 years, building all sorts of impressive buildings and creating new trade routes. But when archaeologist Howard Carter found her tomb in the Valley of the Kings, her sarcophagus was empty. However, Carter did find 2 coffins in another tomb, one of which belonged to Hatshepsut's wet nurse and the other to an unknown woman. In 2006, a team of specialists decided to investigate whether that mysterious lady was the queen herself. They found a molar tooth in a wooden box with Hatshepsut's name on it, and when they compared it to a gap in the mummy's mouth, it was a perfect match. Ramses II was a pretty impressive ruler, but it was his mummy that eventually made history. Now, we don't hear too much about his daddy. Okay, I'll stop. Ramses is considered to be the most powerful pharaoh in all of Egypt, as he reigned for a whopping 6 decades. He also lived to be over 90 years old. Now that's pretty amazing, considering the time he lived in. Ramses II supposedly had over 100 offspring too. Talk about a big family. When he passed away, his body was originally buried in the Valley of the Kings, but some sneaky guys tried to rob his tomb of all his treasures. Officials back in the day weren't having any of that though, so they moved his body to a secret location to keep it safe. Fast forward to the 1800s, and Ramses II's mummy was discovered along with a bunch of other rulers and important officials. But it wasn't in the best condition, so archaeologists flew it to Paris to get it, pampered. Problem was, he couldn't just be transported into another country. The only solution available was to give Ramses II his own passport. His occupation was listed as king, and the document even featured his photo. Most mummies aren't necessarily known for having the most hydrated skin. But that of an ancient woman, also known as Lady Di, proves otherwise. No, not that Lady Di. This wealthy lady from ancient times was discovered in an ornate tomb in 1971, and she looked fabulous, if we can say so about a mummy. Thanks to the special conditions in her tomb, like the moisture in the environment and the lack of oxygen, her body was almost perfectly preserved. Her skin was soft, her hair was on point, and she was still flexible. The museum that now proudly displays her mummy also shows a ton of fancy items that were buried with her, like dinnerware and musical instruments. Archaeologists investigated the mummy further and discovered that she passed away from a heart attack at around 50 years old. Even though it hasn't been around for over 2,000 years, Lady Di is still making history. The mummy of Otzi the Iceman was discovered in the Alps in 1991. Austrian authorities initially thought he was a modern mountaineer because he was so well preserved. Turns out, he was actually from the Copper Age. He was found in a mountain pass over 10,000 feet above sea level. Through studying his mummy, we've learned so much about life in Copper Age Europe. For example, we know that he was a native of Central Europe and enjoyed eating meat. He also suffered from arthritis, narrowing arteries, and intestinal problems. But he likely used acupuncture and medicinal herbs to treat these conditions. And apparently, he was pretty handy with tools. He sharpened them just days before his untimely demise. Who knows if he was expecting trouble or just getting ready for some routine work. Now, King Tut and his story is most likely the one that made all mummies famous. This pharaoh passed away at the young age of 19, more than 3,000 years ago. But his mummy is still one of the most well-known in the world. When his tomb was opened in 1922, people went wild because it was still intact, unlike many other royal tombs. It had some seriously blinged-out coffins, including one made of solid gold. Not only did Tut's tomb give us a glimpse into ancient Egyptian history, but his mummy also taught us a lot about the time he lived in. DNA analysis helped identify his parents and revealed that the pharaoh had a rare bone disorder that might have made walking a bit tough. Now, Ginger is most likely one of the coolest mummies you'll ever hear about. He's like a time traveler from 5,000 years ago who's still looking fly with his golden hair and perfectly preserved nails. Ginger was discovered in Egypt and is believed to be the earliest known mummified body. Before people even knew about mummification, they used to place bodies in shallow graves in the hot, dry sand. And since the sand absorbed all the water, bacteria couldn't reproduce and the body was preserved naturally. Now, scientists are not sure if Ginger's preservation was intentional or not, but since he was buried with some pottery vessels, it's likely that whoever buried him knew some serious preservation techniques. If you want to meet Ginger in person, he's currently chilling at the British Museum. One Dutch art collector bought a statue from Asia and ended up finding a weird discovery. The statue contained a mummy hidden inside. Unfortunately, the body was too fragile to move, so they had to leave it there. The coolest part is that this mummy is over 1,000 years old and was on display for 200 years before being encased in the statue. When scientists did a CT scan, they found out that the mummy was filled with paper scraps covered in writings. Experts think he might have done this thing called self-mummification, which is a pretty intense process involving a special diet and tea that makes your body less prone to bacteria. Only a few people could handle this ritual, and those who managed to do that were seriously respected. No other Egyptian queen has baffled scientists and historians like the stunning Nefertiti. Based on her statues, she was known for her slender neck, wide eyes, and high cheekbones. Her name translates to "the beautiful woman has come." Talk about living up to your name, huh? Even though she wasn't a pharaoh herself, Nefertiti still managed to leave a lasting impression. Written records suggest that, as a wife and queen, she held an incredibly influential role. Because of her power, she was indeed admired, but she also managed to make quite a lot of enemies throughout her life. She was also related to King Tut, but not biologically. Rather, she was his stepmother. So far, locals have yet to identify her mummy, but that may soon change. A local Egyptologist who has been busy excavating tombs in the Valley of the Kings has found 2 mummies that he believes could be Nefertiti and her daughter. According to specialists, we may soon finally get a definitive answer about the identity of these 2 mummies. And if one of them does turn out to be Nefertiti, we could be in for a real treat. DNA analysis and CT scans of the mummy could give us the most complete and accurate image of the queen that we've ever seen. It's crazy to think that we've only scratched the surface of what lies beneath modern-day Egypt. Nefertiti ruled during a time of great power and prosperity in Egypt, but unfortunately passed away in a period of social turmoil, leading to her gravesite being lost. Now, where's my mummy?
You're digging in Egypt's famous Saqqara necropolis, also known as the ultimate VIP graveyard for pharaohs, when suddenly you find a giant pink door hiding something no one knew existed. Behind this giant stone door, one that wasn't supposed to open, by the way, you find a lost tomb of Egyptian royalty. Alright, history lovers, it's time to buckle up because archaeologists just pulled off something straight out of an Indiana Jones movie. Let's travel all the way to Saqqara, one of Egypt's most mysterious and treasure-packed ancient sites. The star of the show? The prince you've probably never heard of, Prince Userefre, son of King Userkaf. No one important, just, the founder of Egypt's 5th dynasty. No big deal. But the way his tomb was discovered. It all started with a massive door, made of pink granite, no less. But this isn't just a regular stone slab. This thing is about 14 to 15 feet tall and 4 feet wide. A giraffe could easily walk through it. This door is also definitely heavier than your neighbor's SUV. But here's the twist. It wasn't a real door. It was a false door, a symbolic gateway meant to allow the spirit of the deceased to pass between the world of the living and the afterlife. Normally, that's where the story ends. After all, false doors are common in tombs. But this one was extra special. You see, false doors were usually made out of limestone, which was pretty common and found everywhere in Egypt. To build one out of red or pink granite, people had to bring these rocks from a quarry located 400 miles away. And you can bet this wasn't a cheap trip. According to Egyptologists, this is the first time a false door of this size and material has ever been found in Egypt, making it a totally unique piece of architecture. Aside from being super expensive, this one had a surprise behind it too. When the team of researchers investigated further, they realized that this false door actually hid a real entrance. And what did it lead to? A hidden tomb packed with statues, relics, and secrets from over 4,000 years ago. The tomb belonged to Prince Userefre, but you can call him Wasar Efra or Wasar Efra too. Despite being totally erased from history, this fella was no minor noble. The hieroglyphs on the pink granite door listed him as the hereditary prince, governor of Buto and Nekeb, royal scribe, minister, judge, and priest of chance. Phew! He was like the ancient Egyptian version of Daenerys Targaryen. These inscriptions not only identify his political and religious roles, but also suggest he held significant power in Lower and Upper Egypt, bridging both regions through his titles. One title in particular, the Priest of Sekher, links him to the deity of the necropolis, the one with the falcon head. This god was the patron of the living and god of the dead at the same time. So I guess the Forgotten Prince was sort of a big deal, considering that his tomb was placed in such a prestigious location within Saqqara. What's even more mysterious is that Prince Userefre doesn't appear in official king lists or royal family trees, which makes us wonder if he passed away before he could rule, or if his legacy was deliberately erased in one of ancient Egypt's classic political dramas. Some scholars now believe his erasure might be connected with shifting religious or political power struggles during the early 5th dynasty, especially as his father Usarkaf was reshaping Egypt's religious order. And speaking of his father, King Usarkaf was a total game changer. He wasn't just the founder of the 5th dynasty, he also kicked off a religious revolution by promoting the sun god Ra over older deities. That's right, Usarkaf built the very first sun temple at Abu Sir, setting off a dynasty-wide obsession with solar worship. After Usarkaf wrapped up his short but revolutionary reign, a whole lineup of pharaohs took the stage. Sahure, Neferirkare, Nusere Ini, basically the boy band of the 5th dynasty. And these guys were all about two things: building pyramids and making money. They weren't just stacking stones, they were expanding Egypt's influence, opening up trade routes to far-off lands and blinging out their temples like it was nobody's business. Back in the tomb, things got even cooler. There was a beautiful red granite offering table covered with inscriptions detailing ritual foods, like an eternal menu for the afterlife, because they believed the deceased could magically eat this food. Fun fact, it was the funerary priests and their families that actually ate the food. There were also pottery shards, amulets, and painted walls, but the real showstoppers were the statues. And this is exactly where things get weird, in a good way. The team found statues of King Djoser, the guy who built Egypt's first pyramid, his wife, and their 10 daughters, inside Prince Userefre's tomb. Hold up, Djoser lived a few centuries before Usarkaf, so what were his statues doing there? Turns out, scientists don't really know. These statues were built during the reign of King Djoser himself and probably belonged to that first ever built pyramid. Experts believe these statues were probably relocated during the 26th dynasty, thousands of years after Djoser, maybe to protect them from destruction, or maybe because they were still venerated. Basically, ancient Egyptians were hoarders, but classy ones. Scientists also know for a fact that some engravings and statues found there were made way later, which means that this tomb probably turned into a deposit for fancy stuff. Or maybe this was just really ancient interior decorating. Anyway, that wasn't all. There was another pink granite entrance on the eastern side of the tomb, with inscriptions linking back to King Neferirkare, another 5th dynasty pharaoh who also tried to build his own pyramid, but failed. And near this second entrance, archaeologists found something never seen before in Saqqara: a set of 13 pink granite statues, all sitting in a row on a high-backed bench, like they were waiting at the DMV of the afterlife. Some had elevated heads, probably representing the prince's wives, while others were missing their heads entirely. One black granite statue was found upside down, Maybe it had taken a tumble sometime during the tomb's long, quiet centuries underground. According to archaeologists, the positioning and head shapes suggest that these statues followed a strict social hierarchy, with the central figures likely representing higher status individuals, while the headless ones might indicate unfinished work or later vandalism. And speaking of black granite statues, another one was found standing proudly inside the tomb. Based on its design and inscriptions, it looks like it was placed there during the 26th dynasty, the same time those Djoser statues were probably moved in. This suggests the tomb didn't just sit abandoned, it was reused, adapted, and maybe even honored by later generations. And by the way, black granite was associated with Osiris, the god of the underworld, during the late period, which means that this statue's presence is a clue that the tomb was a ritual space long after the prince's death. All of this, giant granite doors, surprise statues, reused tombs, adds up to a truly thrilling find. Prince Userefre may not be a household name yet, but his tomb is now one of the most fascinating ever found in Saqqara. It tells a story not just of the Old Kingdom, but of how ancient Egyptians kept connecting to their past, even thousands of years later. So, what does it all mean? Why hide a tomb behind a fake door? Why pack it with statues from different eras? And who exactly was Prince Userefre? These are the kinds of mysteries that keep archaeologists digging and keep the rest of us fascinated. In the end, this discovery isn't just about one tomb, it's about how much is still waiting beneath the sands of Egypt. As more gets uncovered, we're reminded again and again that ancient history isn't gone. It's just sleeping behind massive pink granite doors. Not many civilizations are as mysterious as ancient Egypt, a powerful empire that lasted over 3,000 years. It gave us pyramids that still stand and myths that still inspire. It's one of the most explored places on Earth, yet somehow, we still find exciting stuff. In Abydos, archaeologists just uncovered a 3,600-year-old royal tomb. It's huge! It has golden hieroglyphs of deities covering the entrance, but the pharaoh's name? It's not there. It's missing. Who was this ruler? And what new chapter could this open in Egypt's story? If there's one place in Egypt where the line between life and demise feels thinner, it's Abydos. To the ancient Egyptians, this was sacred ground. They believed it was the burial place of Osiris, the god who literally passed away, had his remains separated, and came back to life to rule the underworld. Because of that, Abydos became Egypt's spiritual gathering place. Pharaohs built amazing temples here, like the Temple of Seti, famous for its King's List, a wall that has the names of 76 pharaohs carved in it. Pilgrims came from across Egypt, leaving offerings and participating in Osiris festivals, where his demise and rebirth were ritually reenacted. It wasn't just symbolic worship, it was Egypt's version of Comic-Con. But instead of cosplaying superheroes, people reenacted gods coming back to life. Obviously, pharaohs competed to be buried as close to Osiris as possible. Abydos became part cemetery, part holy city, part afterlife insurance policy. Fast forward thousands of years, and we still uncover remarkable stuff around Abydos. That's the case with the recently discovered tomb. In early 2025, a joint team of researchers from the US and Egypt decided to dig beneath a rocky rise ominously called Anubis Mountain. You remember Anubis, the jackal-headed deity who guarded cemeteries. The uncovered royal burial was hidden 23 feet below the surface. Sadly, even though it eluded archaeologists for so long, robbers had already taken away with treasures ages ago. They could definitely tell this was a tomb of someone super important. Similar to how you can walk around a mansion with no furniture but still deduce that someone rich must have lived there. The chamber had mud brick vaults rising over 16 feet. That's taller than a female giraffe standing upright. For something built 36 centuries ago, it still felt enormous. However, when you remember that Egyptians were masters of architecture, nothing seems surprising. So no treasures, no golden mask, and sadly, no name. The cartouche that should have spelled the king's identity was unreadable. Egyptian tombs usually bragged about who was inside. In ancient Egypt, a cartouche was basically a big oval name tag for kings wrapped in hieroglyphs. Think of them as VIP passes that worked in both this life and the next. Without it, your soul couldn't check into the afterlife hotel. That's because to the Egyptians, your name, your Ren, wasn't just so your teacher could distinguish you from kids with the same haircut. It was a core part of who you were. As long as your Ren survived, so did you. To have your name forgotten was considered a fate worse than passing away. A soul cannot journey without a name. That's why you'd see cartouches all over the place, on temples, obelisks, jewelry, statues, and tomb walls. It wasn't there just for the marketing. It kept the pharaoh's presence front and center everywhere you looked. Imagine building a massive tomb only for 3,600 years later to walk in and go, who is this guy again? Not cool at all. That's why it's fair to imagine our nameless pharaoh haunting the robbers for all eternity. So yeah, cartouche was considered very significant. One of the most famous and mind-blowing examples comes from the tomb of Thutmose III. His burial chamber and sarcophagus were literally shaped like a cartouche. In other words, the entire room was a living architectural symbol of his name. Thankfully, in the recently discovered tomb, not everything was erased. Painted in golden hues at the entrance were two familiar guardians, deities Isis and Nephthys. Isis was the magician who stitched Osiris back together and breathed life into him. Nephthys, her sister, was the eternal mourner and protector of the mummy. Together, they promised that whoever rested here would not face the afterlife alone, and it's one additional proof of the importance of the mysterious pharaoh. So, who could this be? To answer that, we need to go down history lane. This tomb dates back to Egypt's messy chapter called the Second Intermediate Period. Instead of one ruler in charge, the country had many rival kingdoms, each with its own little power base, like a real-life Egyptian version of Game of Thrones. And right in the middle of that chaos was Abydos. For a while, it was home to its own line of kings, the so-called Abydos dynasty. Those weren't the pyramid builders everyone knows, and that's why they're so mysterious. They left behind almost nothing. No great monuments, no sprawling cities, just fragments of names on broken blocks. For centuries, many scholars even doubted they existed at all. That sorta changed in 2014, when archaeologists uncovered the tomb of Senebkay, one of those shadowy kings. Now, everything we know about Senebkay points to him having quite a story to tell. His bones revealed 18 deep wounds, the kind you get in battle. He had blows to his skull, back, and hands, and likely lost his life fighting, making him one of the few pharaohs we know who sadly fell in combat. His tomb was modest, with reused artifacts from earlier kings, but it delivered one priceless thing: proof. Until Senebkay, the Abydos dynasty was just a theory. With him, it became real. And that's why the new discovery could be a big deal. The newly uncovered royal tomb at Abydos shares the same layout and style as Senebkay's. It has limestone chambers, mud brick vaults, and protective deities, although it's much bigger. Which again raises the possibility that we're looking at an even earlier, more powerful ruler of Abydos. Whoever he was, he wanted to be remembered alongside the greats. Which is ironic, because it seems that history tried erasing him. Perhaps additional findings alongside his tomb could tell us more. Yes, there's more, and it's actually pretty cool. Not far from Abydos, in the village of Banawit, archaeologists uncovered a Roman-era pottery workshop. Yeah, you heard that right, a pottery factory close to a pharaoh's burial ground. The site had huge clay kilns, storage rooms, and even broken shards called ostraca. They were basically ancient sticky notes, except instead of shopping lists, those had receipts scratched onto them in Greek and Demotic Egyptian. Little records of everyday transactions, the kind of thing you'd never expect to find near a lost dynasty king. Honestly, the potters missed a chance. Forget boring receipts. They should have been selling Osiris's mugs and Anubis figurines to pilgrims and tourists. But that's not all. It seems that centuries later, during the medieval period, the same ground became a cemetery. Archaeologists found mud brick graves with skeletal remains. This could mean that Abydos kept its aura of significance for hundreds of years after the Age of Pharaohs. So why this hill again and again? Is this place really a getaway to the afterlife? It is, after all, the very place where Osiris is said to rest. That belief lingered like a shadow for thousands of years, strong enough to pull in pharaohs and later medieval families. Different rituals, same sacred ground. Although, to be fair, the Romans weren't here for Osiris. They came to make pots. The story of Abydos is not over. The excavations will continue, and who knows what else could be discovered in the future. Today, archaeologists are armed with tools that are basically X-ray glasses for the desert. Every scan could reveal a hidden chamber, or if we're lucky, finally give our nameless pharaoh his wren back to him. In fact, I became strangely invested in finding out who he was. So let's hope for some news soon. It's only a matter of time. Do you have your own theories? Let me know.
During the early 1920s, the world was mesmerized by King Tut. A British archaeologist, Howard Carter, discovered the young pharaoh's tomb in Egypt's Valley of the Kings, 1922. But the public wasn't only interested in gold and jewelry. The press wrote about the curse of the pharaohs, but was it true? Was an ancient curse really the reason everyone entering the pyramids lost their lives? At the time, this was the only explanation for a series of unexplained passings. The man present at the opening of King Tut's burial chamber, George Herbert V, Earl of Carnarvon, lived only 5 more months after the discovery. He had also sponsored the dig. In comes Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. You probably know of him, the English writer behind Sherlock Holmes. He claimed that an evil elemental caused the explorer's demise. He must have been joking, right? Unfortunately, no. The newspapers continued to blame the pharaoh's curse after every Egyptologist left this world. These are the scientists who study the ancient cultures of Egypt. The archaeologist who opened King Tutankhamun's tomb passed away full 17 years after the discovery. The reason for it wasn't a secret: Hodgkin's disease. Yet again, journalists around the world wrote of a curse. This was getting ridiculous. But science must have had a rational explanation, right? Well, it did. And that explanation was common mold. Harmful fungi, Aspergillus, can survive for ages in sealed tombs. When humans inhale them, there's a high risk of infection in people who have a weakened immune system. Today, doctors believe this is what happened to the unfortunate explorer more than a century ago. Scientists now know that this type of fungi grows especially well on grain. And King Tut's tomb was full of offerings in the form of baskets full of raw grain and bread. Researchers discovered other varieties of fungi on ancient Egyptian mummies. These molds can easily cause some nasty consequences for humans. The danger of rotting organic material is real. Just look inside your fridge. Any food leftovers you have there start to go off after just 3 to 4 days. You can imagine what happens to food in a sealed chamber after thousands of years. Food is just one kind of organic material. There is also wood. If you expose it to water or even moisture in the air, it starts to deteriorate. You don't have to travel to Egypt to see the effects of this process. Any abandoned building in your neighborhood can serve as an example. When a piece of wood gets wet and has no way of drying out, there is going to be damage. From fungi to wood-boring insects, the list is long. Rotten wood presents a huge structural issue. Beams and floor panels are all made of timber, so you better not go inside a failing building. You can easily lose your footing. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. The building materials since the time of the pharaohs have changed, but so have the dangers. One of the best examples is asbestos. Until the 1970s, most home insulation materials contained this substance. It was in everything, from boilers to soundproofing. This microfiber provided excellent heat insulation. But then, the United States banned asbestos in 1989. The UK did the same a decade later. The reason for it is that asbestos becomes a health hazard when it gets damaged. When humans inhale asbestos fibers, they can get seriously sick. Abandoned strictures are full of this material, and there is no one to maintain them. You see the danger now. Another material is also common in old buildings: lead. Ancient Romans used lead piping to channel spring water into their homes. They also cooked in lead vessels, which was probably not the wisest of choices. You see, lead and water don't go well together because of something called corrosion. But this problem isn't ancient. US officials banned lead piping only in 1986. That means that 7% of American households still have lead service lines. And this is not the only source of poisoning. Until the mid-1960s, builders used lead paint to coat woodwork. In abandoned buildings, this lead coating snapped a long time ago. Anyone who touches doors and windows will disturb this lead dust and inhale it. The dust particles are at least visible to an unaided eye. This is not the case for carbon monoxide. This gas has no color, so you can't see it. It has no odor, so you can't smell it. No way to detect a carbon monoxide leak at all. And how does this dangerous gas usually escape? Poor maintenance. Well, abandoned buildings have zero maintenance. 1 second, you could be exploring an old factory, and the next you could feel dizzy with and have a terrible headache. These are just some of the symptoms of CO poisoning, the less severe ones. But what is the source? All it takes is for an old boiler to finally give way after years of neglect. We've reached an important question. What is the main factor in air quality inside a room? If you are thinking the level of oxygen, try again. It turns out that oxygen levels drop by only 0.3% in 8 hours inside an airtight room. This is a room in which doors and windows are sealed with tape, so the decrease is even smaller in normal conditions. Oxygen isn't the main problem. The levels of carbon dioxide rise sharply inside a sealed room. This is the direct result of human breathing. We inhale oxygen and exhale CO2. Think of it as a waste gas. Normally it's only a tiny portion of the air we breathe, 0.04%. But in a sealed room, high levels of carbon dioxide will make you feel drowsy. And that's the last thing you need when inside a dilapidated building. Carbon dioxide will decrease your ability to think clearly. Researchers from Harvard did an interesting study in 2016. They had office workers come in 6 days in a row to complete a problem-solving test. During the week, they gradually raised the carbon dioxide levels in the mock-up office. The results of the same test kept getting worse over time. There are many factors at play, but CO2 levels definitely had an impact on the workers' problem-solving ability. The test took place inside a typical office environment, not inside a crumbling building where visitors must watch their every step. When I say visitors, I really mean trespassers, and trespassing is a criminal offense in the United States. This goes both for private and public property. If you defy the law, you can be fined up to $5,000 or even face lockup time. That should make you think twice before jumping over a fence with a no trespassing sign. But again, you might not be the only one inside. You can never know who else is in the building. Perhaps a person up to no good? It doesn't have to be a person at all. Animals can pose a threat as well. You would be startled if you saw a rat, for example. But the poor animal would be scared as well. It might bite you. The list of diseases rats carry is pretty long. But rodents' teeth can cause other forms of damage. They grow constantly, so the animal has to constantly nibble on something to stop them from overgrowing. If you ever felt peckish at 1 a.m., you know the feeling. Electric cables are high on the rodents' menu. Abandoned buildings have plenty of those. Old wiring is dangerous on its own. Structures erected before 1984 often used wires made out of aluminum. Today, copper is the standard because an aluminum wire is 55 times more likely to catch on fire than a copper one. Flipping a switch in a rundown building can cost you your life. Be on alert for telltale signs that something is wrong. Lights that flicker, sparks from sockets, and the smell of smoke. And yeah, don't count on an earth cable to protect you from electrocution. Ground cables became standard only in the 1960s.
This coffin seems to defy logic. No visible openings, no way in or out. And yet, inside lies Lady Shanette Ah, a mysterious woman from ancient Egypt, perfectly preserved even after 3,000 years. How did she get there? It was the third intermediate period in Egypt, a time between great dynasties. Pharaohs wore the blue crowns. Priests in Thebes were almost as powerful as kings.
markets were filled with the cries of merchants selling dates, papyrus, and precious perfumes. Lady Chanet was in her late 30s or early 40s, old age by Egyptian standards of that time. Like other Egyptians at the time, she ate meals of bread, lentils, and fish. By that age, her teeth were already badly worn down, yellowish with enamel eroded, because food in ancient Egypt often had grains of sand in it. But she wasn't just a regular woman. When she passed away for unknown reasons, her burial was lavish. Locals wrapped her body in expensive linen and adorned with artificial eyes to replace her real ones that would help her see in the afterlife. And that's exactly how we found her 3,000 years later, in a beautifully decorated sarcophagus. It was made of cartonnage, which is kind of like papier-mâché, made by layering linen and papyrus with adhesive. These coffins were wildly strong, lasting for thousands of years, all thanks to Egypt's super dry climate. But most importantly, Egyptians only used it for the elite. So she was someone very important to the locals, though we might never know why. But there was only one huge problem with her mummy. How did they even put her in the coffin? No matter how much researchers looked, there were simply no entry points. The only visible gap was a tiny slit near her feet. But that's not nearly large enough to place her entire body inside. This mystery puzzled them for decades, until they finally learned the truth only recently. They studied those mummies at the Field Museum in Chicago using new technology, CT scans. It's basically like taking thousands of X-rays and piecing them together to create detailed 3D images. That's how we can learn more about the bodies without disturbing them. And it turns out the ancient Egyptians were unbelievably clever. They didn't construct the cartonnage around Shenet-Ah's body, which would be a common and easy thing to do. Instead, embalmers created the coffin first. Then, they softened this coffin with moisture to make it flexible. After that, they carefully molded it around her wrapped body. They did cut a slit along the back of the coffin to do that, but then they laced it up like a corset, so it seemed like there were no openings. Finally, they secured a wooden panel at her feet to keep everything in place. That's where the tiny slit came from. Usually, the insides were removed and put in jars, symbolically guarded by the 4 sons of Horus. Egyptians believed that the deceased would need all that stuff once they got into the afterlife. They also thought it would help preserve the body for ages, which, as we can see, worked amazingly well. Thanks to their beliefs, we now have mummies as time capsules. Each son of Horus was supposed to protect each of the specific body parts. The human-headed Imseti for the liver, the baboon-headed Hapi for the lungs, the jackal-headed Dalmatef for the stomach, and the falcon-headed Kebis Senuv for the intestines. It's crazy how much effort the embalmers put into their job, especially in Lady Chanet-Ah. They wanted to make sure her body remains untouched and the sarcophagus would be perfect for her. You can't help but wonder, who was she if she mattered so much? The ancient Egyptians literally viewed the afterlife as modern retirement planning. You're not just passing away, you gotta prepare yourself for it. Prepare the body, eyes to see, and so on. And the richer or more important you were, the better your afterlife would be. But Chanet-Ah wasn't the only fascinating mummy they studied. They also decided to scan Harwa, an Egyptian man who lived around the same time. Judging by the mummy, he also had a high social status. His mummy revealed no signs of hard labor and his teeth were well kept, which means he enjoyed some high-quality food without tons of sand in it. Some fellas got lucky both in life and after it. But there were many mysterious mummies throughout history. One of them is Chin Tsun, also known as Lady Dai. The story of her began in 1968. Some workers near Changsha, China were digging an air raid shelter for a hospital. But suddenly, they accidentally uncovered an ancient burial site. They came down there and stumbled upon something incredible. 3 tombs belonging to a noblewoman. her husband, and a young man believed to be their son. She was a noblewoman from ancient China, and she had a fascinating backstory. She lived over 2,000 years ago during the Western Han Dynasty. She was married to Li Kang, a guy who served as chancellor to the Changsha Kingdom, a high-ranking official. At first, it looks like Lady Di lived a life of luxury and privilege. She had private musicians to play at her parties, and for her personal enjoyment. She probably played the guqin, an instrument that back in the day people associated with intellect and elegance. And she certainly ate like an empress. Fine meats, delicacies, and all things like that. Even her wardrobe was full of some exquisite silk, not even mentioning the tons of cosmetics. But all this wealth came at a cost. The more she aged, the worse her health became. She got a full pack: a heart condition, diabetes, high pressure, and liver issues. It also looks like her back was driving her crazy, probably making it hard for her to even move. Finally, as a cherry on top, she developed gallstones. All this packed together eventually led to a heart attack that took her life around the age of 50. There was one haunting detail. Scientists found over 130 melon seeds in her stomach and intestines. Most likely, she ate watermelon just hours before she passed away, which means it was probably during summer when the fruit was ripe. She enjoyed a sweet, simple treat before her life was cut short. The excavation began in 1972, and this wasn't easy at all. Over 1,500 local students had to help. And Lady Di was the most mysterious one. She was buried in 4 rectangular pine boxes, one inside the other like a Matryoshka doll, all wrapped in 20 layers of silk, and all that sealed with lots of charcoal and white clay. The coffins were painted beautifully as well, adorned with protective deities, mythical animals, and clouds which symbolized the heavens. There were drawings of divine creatures and Mount Kunlun. The myth said that on this mountain, people reach eternal happiness. All this told us a lot about the Han Dynasty, their beliefs about afterlife, art, daily lives, and their remarkable craftsmanship. And then researchers finally got to the body. It was astonishing. Soft skin, joints that could still bend, and in general, she was almost intact. She even kept her hair, eyelashes, fingerprints, and even traces of blood. It's like she literally passed away only a few weeks ago. Ancient people used a very clever technique to preserve her. It looks like embalmers put her into some weird, mysterious acidic liquid. This liquid prevented bacteria from growing. Unfortunately, it also gave rashes to all the scientists that touched Lady Di. And this rash lasted for 3 months. And you know what they buried together with her? Over 1,400 artifacts, mostly personal stuff like silk clothes, cosmetics, and musical instruments. Even food, grains, meats, wine, and pastries. There were also 162 carved wooden figurines of various servants and musicians. It's possible that they were either just there to service her even in the afterlife, or maybe based on her actual servants. In 1850, French scientist Auguste Mariette went to Egypt looking for manuscripts, but accidentally found a head of a sphinx sticking out of the dunes. He cleared the sand and figured out the sphinx was guiding the entrance to some underground construction. Several months later, he finally entered the Serapeum of Saqqara. Inside, he found an enormous granite sarcophagi with remnants of 64 bulls. Scientists are still amazed by the tech that the ancient Egyptians used to transport those enormous boxes. The Serapeum was built around the year 3000 before the Common Era. It was an underground tomb built to honor the sacred Apis bulls of ancient Egypt. It had a long hallway, almost 500 feet long, with giant stone rooms on both sides. Some of the sarcophagi weighed as much as 50 average cars, and all of them were made with super precision, with exact 90-degree angles. These sarcophagi were beautifully decorated with hieroglyphs and carvings that told stories about the lives and importance of the Apis bulls. Now, there are 24 sarcophagi left. In ancient Egypt, Apis bulls were very special animals connected to the deity Ptah. They thought the bulls carried Ptah's spirit and wisdom, helped the pharaoh, and protected the Egyptians. Priests looked for special markings on young bulls to find Apis bulls. It could be a white triangle on its forehead, which symbolized divine light, a shape on its back like a vulture's wing, and a scarab shape under its tongue, which stood for rebirth. If a bull had these signs, they believed it was chosen by Ptah and treated it like royalty. The chosen bulls lived in a special temple in Memphis, the city where they worshipped Ptah. They received the best care and offerings from visitors who wanted their blessings. When an Apis bull passed away, it was treated with great honor and mummified. When Mariette entered the Serapeum, he noticed traces of rollers on the gallery's floor and found 2 wooden horizontal winches. Each had 8 levers. Later, other explorers saw double rails. The burial chambers were lower than the hallway floor. To get the boxes into place, workers filled the chambers with sand so the sarcophagi could be rolled in straight. Then they slowly removed the sand to gently lower the boxes into perfectly cut spaces in the bedrock. A carved stone sign found in the Serapeum said it took 28 days to move just one sarcophagus and its lid into its spot during the time of Ptolemy II. The extreme precision of the sarcophagi with 90-degree angles also has an explanation. Ancient Egyptians wrote texts, or rather, papyrus, on geometry a long time ago. It shows that they knew the approximate number pi and could calculate the volume of a pyramid with its top cut off. If they could figure out complicated math like that back then, it makes sense that they could also carve perfectly flat surfaces 500 years later. All this sounds pretty legit, but some people think certain things don't add up here. The size of boxes is way larger than the size of bulls, yet they buried pharaohs in tiny coffins that barely fit their bodies. The sarcophagi are made out of granite with crazy precision, and they could have just used limestone, which would have made things way easier. The transportation of the boxes seems pretty simple, but only in theory. If one person could pull about 440 pounds, then at least 250 people would be needed to pull just one box. The tunnels in the Serapeum are really narrow, only about 2 feet wider than the boxes themselves. There's no way hundreds of people could have squeezed into those tight spaces to pull the boxes. And even if they did, how would they turn the box in the cramped corridor, lower it into its niche, and place it perfectly in the middle? Somehow, they did this 24 times, and every box is centered perfectly. Plus, the chambers were dusty, and there were no signs of soot from lamps. This means they must have worked in almost complete darkness. The real use of the boxes could also be different. A long time ago, even before the Egyptian pharaohs ruled, the local people already knew how to use fermentation. It happens when tiny organisms called yeast eat certain ingredients like starch and turn them into gas and ethanol. So someone in ancient Egypt probably put food like barley, bread, and even meat inside a giant stone box, then closed it tight with a heavy lid. These stone boxes, carved from granite, were so precisely made that they were almost completely sealed, so nothing could escape from it. As the yeast inside the box started working, it created more and more CO2 gas. It built up pressure inside the box. The granite boxes were incredibly strong. They could handle more pressure than a car tire can hold. When granite was squeezed under such pressure, its crystals produced a tiny electric charge. This effect was possible because granite contains quartz, a material that reacts to pressure this way. The process also needed meat or animal parts, possibly to help the yeast grow better. Meat contains something called oleic acid, which yeast needs to keep growing and to survive the bad effects of the ethanol it produces. As the pressure inside the box kept growing, the combination of gases and electricity made these boxes not just ancient fridges, but powerful energy systems. Over time, the pressure inside got so strong that it could push the lid open and the gas would escape with a pop. But when people rediscovered the Serapeum in 1850, they found old drawings that showed piles of stones stacked on top of some of the box lids. So, someone long ago probably tried to make the lids even heavier by adding extra weight to make it harder for the gas pressure to push them open. This extra weight also meant the quartz crystals in the granite could keep creating more electricity under all that pressure. If someone opened one of these stone boxes thousands of years later, they would only find bones from bulls that were placed in the box. And that's exactly what Mariette discovered in the 1850s. They opened the Serapeum for visitors soon after the first excavations in the second half of the 19th century. Prince of Wales even had a luncheon with his guests in one of the sarcophagi. Sands and earthquakes made the site inaccessible for a while, but now you can visit it again and try to solve the mystery yourself. With new tech, we could have answers to many other historical mysteries soon. A team of scientists at Chicago's Field Museum of Natural History recently used a special CT scanner to learn more about ancient Egyptian mummies without unwrapping them. They gently rolled 26 mummies on custom carts out to the parking lot, where the scanner was waiting. It took thousands of detailed X-ray pictures of each mummy and their coffins. When all the pictures were put together, they created 3D images that showed what was inside, the skeletons, and some artifacts. The scientists hope these images will help them understand ancient Egyptian burial practices from over 3,000 years ago. Even though the scanning process only took 4 days, it might take 3 years to study all the data. But scientists were able to learn some personal details about the mummies. One of the most popular mummified individuals at the museum, Lady Chineta, was a woman who lived in ancient Egypt about 3,000 years ago. It looks like she passed away in her late 30s or early 40s. To make sure her body looked complete for the afterlife, embalmers put stuffing in her neck to keep it from collapsing. They also placed artificial eyes in her sockets, so she would have eyes in the next world. She was wrapped in fancy linen and placed in a beautifully decorated coffin. The scans revealed that it had been carefully crafted with a slit at the back, which embalmers used to fit the body. There were also some artistic details on the surface, like markings for her knees. It looks like her burial was on the scale of a high-end luxury car.
When you hear the word mummy, you might get a chill down your spine. That's because most of us associate this word with those creepy characters we've seen in some scary movies. But in reality, mummies have helped us understand a lot about ancient civilizations, their rulers, and about how people used to deal with losing their loved ones. The people most famous worldwide for their mummies are the ancient Egyptians. They believed that some sort of existence after passing away was possible, if certain conditions were met. That's why they insisted on preserving the human body through the process of mummification and placing the mummy in a furnished tomb, kind of like giving it a fully functioning apartment of its own. Why did they believe in this? Well, because they were deeply connected to their natural environment for the most part. They saw the natural cycles around them, like how the sun rose every day, followed by the moon, or how new life was always sprouting from plants, even after they had wilted away. They also believed that the powerful spirit Osiris, who represented the cycle of passing away and resurrection, played a role in this process. To prepare for the afterlife, the ancient Egyptians followed certain rituals, like mummification, which involved using materials like honey, resins, and incense to preserve the body. There's no other mummy more popular than that of King Tut. He was a young pharaoh who ruled over 3,000 years ago in Egypt. The problem with discovering ancient royal tombs is that most of such burial sites were previously robbed. People knew ancient rulers had been left with many valuable belongings, so those locations became vulnerable to thieves. When King Tut's tomb was opened in 1922, people were excited because it had not been robbed, like many other previously discovered royal tombs. That's how well hidden it was. Inside, his mummy was encapsulated in a total of 3 coffins, including one made of gold. The objects found in his tomb showed us what ancient Egypt was like, and studying his mummy also helped us learn about the culture and practices popular at the time when he passed away. We also learned about his family by looking at his DNA. Scientists were able to discover that he had had a disease called malaria and a problem with his foot that might have made it hard for him to walk. Ramses II was another pharaoh in Egypt who ruled for 68 years, which was quite a lot back in the day. He was known for his expansion campaigns and building projects. Many objects from his time as a ruler still exist today, including a large statue of him. Ramses II was about 6 feet tall and lived to be about 90 years old. After looking at his mummy, scientists concluded that he may have had a medical condition that affected his spine. Now, remember those thieves I mentioned before? They are probably the reason why Ramses II ended up in a plain coffin in a secret collection of royal mummies at Deir al-Bahari, which was rediscovered in 1881. Thankfully, archaeologists were able to identify him because his journeys had been recorded on his wrappings. The process was really tedious too. In fact, in ancient Egypt, the mummification process could take a staggering 70 days to complete. A special person would say a very specific speech while delicately handling the body and drying it out using a type of salt called natron. They also used linen and resin to make the body look more lifelike and to wrap it in cloth. The tomb was equally as important for ancient Egyptians. The walls of King Tut's tomb, for example, were adorned with intricate artwork that depicted his journey to the afterlife, from his burial procession to his passage through the underworld. The ancient Egyptians believed that everyone made this journey after passing away, and they filled their tombs with items and paintings to help the person in their spiritual travels. Additionally, the walls of the tomb were decorated with spells from a special book, which contained a collection of poems that the Egyptians believed would help people reach the afterlife. And speaking of how important this journey was, people also placed food in these ancient tombs. In King Tut's tomb, archaeologists discovered 36 jars of vintage beverages and 8 baskets of fruit, which were believed to be left there to help him in his journey to the afterlife. The Egyptians believed that traveling to the afterlife took a really long time, so they left a lot of supplies, such as food and water, to sustain their loved ones. Pharaohs also generally had numerous luxurious garments and beautiful jewelry in their tombs to ensure that they would have a fashionable journey. These items included various types of linen clothing, such as tunics, scarves, gloves, and headdresses, as well as a lot of gold jewelry with precious stones, like bracelets, buckles, pendants, necklaces, rings, and even precious depictions of insects for protection. Some were also deposited with fans made from ivory and ostrich feathers to keep them cool in the afterlife. Some ancient rulers were even placed in their forever apartments along with boats. For example, Pharaoh Khufu built the Great Pyramid at Giza as his tomb, and a large ship was found inside. King Tut, however, was buried with multiple boat paddles, but no actual boat. Instead, he had 3 chariots and numerous walking sticks made of precious materials, perhaps indicating he'd rather travel to the beyond by land, not by water. Amongst the most interesting objects found near ancient mummies are bottles of oils and perfumes. If rulers were supposed to be fashionable, why not smell nice too, right? Also, some of them had some ancient kinds of board games, most of them made out of precious materials like gold or ivory. One of those games was called Senet. It was very popular amongst the ancient Egyptians and very similar to modern-day chess. The ancient Egyptians may have the most famous mummies out there, but they weren't the first to invent the procedure. In fact, it all started in South America with an ancient civilization named the Chinchorro. As far as we know today, these people were the first to mummify their loved ones that had passed away. They did it somewhere around 2,000 years before the Egyptians started their own rituals. Sure, we can tell a lot about ancient rulers by studying these mummies, but until recently, we had no idea what they really looked like during their lifetime. Not so long ago, though, some very special mummy paintings were found by archaeologists studying ancient Egyptian objects. These mummy portraits are highly detailed paintings of individuals that were made while they were still alive. Such paintings were often painted on wood, as opposed to the classical portraits we all know about, which are painted on canvas. They are known for their realism and beauty, and have even been used by researchers to diagnose diseases by comparing them to the corresponding mummies. Some of these portraits also include depictions of jewelry, which was later found on the mummies. The recent discovery of these mummy portraits in Central Egypt is significant, as it marks the first time in over a century that such paintings have been found. Mummies appeared all around the world naturally, too. Mummification can occur without people intervening because of natural conditions, like extremely cold or hot environments, places with a lack of oxygen, or accidental exposure to chemicals that preserve the body. These conditions don't allow bacteria to grow, resulting in the body remaining more or less intact. Famous Otzi was one of these mummies. We know today he was a man who lived around 5,000 years ago in Europe. But upon his discovery in the Alps in 1991, Austrian authorities initially believed that he was a modern mountaineer because of how well preserved the body was. However, after the Iceman was removed from the glacier, it was determined that he was actually from the Copper Age.
For over 3,000 years, no one knew this place even existed. And then, out of nowhere, archaeologists digging near Alexandria uncovered something absolutely shocking: a forgotten Egyptian city. This place is buried under Greek ruins, hiding secrets that could rewrite the history of pharaohs and their armies. And one of the artifacts, which looks like a simple wine jug, changed everything. We thought that we already placed all the important parts on the map of ancient Egypt: pyramids, Thebes, Luxor, Alexandria. But nope, the map just got an update. The new city was a big deal, and it's about 3,400 years old. It's just been discovered at the site called Kom el Nugus. This place is located west of Alexandria and tucked between the Mediterranean and a saltwater lake called Lake Mariut. This discovery raised a few eyebrows. Scientists thought that this place used to be empty and that it was only settled by the Greeks in about 332 BCE. But it turns out that people lived in Kom el Nugus way before that. When archaeologists were digging through Greek ruins, they started noticing something unexpected: mud brick walls. Yep, you know, the pyramid type. That's the kind Egyptians built during the New Kingdom. These mud bricks were made from mud, clay, sand, and straw. These ingredients were mixed with water and dried in the sun, not baked. Egyptians used them for thousands of years to build houses, temples, palaces, and yes, the pyramids. Of course, other civilizations did use mud brick too, but Egyptian mud brick is kinda quirky. They used straw that grew in their regions, layout styles, and mortar. That's what helped the experts realize that Egyptians used to hang out in Kom el Nugus. That alone raised eyebrows, and then they found more. An entire street layout, buried structures, and even a temple built by Ramses the Great himself. His name speaks for itself. This guy was one of the most famous pharaohs in all of Egyptian history. He ruled ancient Egypt for 60 years, fought huge battles, and just loved building tons of stuff like that temple. People loved him so much that later pharaohs literally pretended to be him or wrote his name on their buildings. That's when archaeologists realized that they weren't looking at some dusty mud bricks of a tiny village. That's an entire buried city. They immediately started digging more. Turns out the whole place wasn't random. It was built with great care. The streets had drains to stop rainwater from damaging the soft mud brick walls. There were also small tomb chapels with writings about soldiers. This suggests this place might have been the military base, and that changes a lot. In ancient Egypt, when the military showed up, there must have been a reason. So what was it? Protection? Conquest? Control of something important? In the case of this city, it was probably about wine, water, and trade on the edge of the desert. What's even crazier is that we still don't know just how big it was. The team has only uncovered part of it so far. There could be fortifications, warehouses, administrative buildings, or even more religious or royal structures waiting underground. We also don't know what this town was called in ancient times. That name is still buried, but it might be uncovered someday, maybe inside a wall, maybe on a scroll, maybe on another broken jug. One of those already turned out to be a mind-blower. A chunk of a ceramic jar, called an amphora, had a royal seal pressed into it, and that seal bore the name Meredaton. Princess Meredaton wasn't just anyone. She was the eldest daughter of Queen Nefertiti and the older sister of King Tutankhamun. Yes, that's right. Both Nefertiti and King Tut were involved here. All that was about a century before Ramses the Great built one of his temples here. Looks like the city was founded back in the days of another pharaoh, the pharaoh Akhenaten, husband of Queen Nefertiti, father of Princess Meredaton, and future king Tutankhamun. That guy, Akhenaten, was a bit of a wild card. He was the type who really gets weird about one of his interests. He tried to completely change Egypt's religion, forcing everyone to worship the sun disk called Aten instead of the usual deities. He basically told all Egypt that all their mythology was wrong, and from now on, there will be no more Osiris, no more Thoth or Set. Just raw sunlight only, people. That's known in history as the Amarna period. And he went all in, changed his name, built an entirely new capital city called Amarna in the middle of the desert, redesigned temples, rewrote hymns, and even banned traditional religious imagery. Even the art got wild at the time. People started getting elongated heads, belly rolls, and all that humanity and vulnerability carved into stone. It was deliberately weird. He wanted to show the family not as perfect gods, but as human vessels of divine light. Everyone had to awkwardly smile and play along because he was the pharaoh after all. The wackiest part is that after his rule, his son, Tutankhamun, reversed all the sun disk-related stuff. He literally changed his name from Tutankhaten, which means living image of the Aten, the sun disk, to Tutankhamun, which means living image of Amun, one of the great older deities. King Tut brought back the old deities, reopened the temples, and erased as much of Akhenaten's legacy as possible. Looks like his family didn't really like the sun cult after all. Meanwhile, this discovered wine jug shows that the city was probably active, thriving with life during Akhenaten's times. That's huge. Up until now, there was no clear evidence that his radical ideas and projects extended all the way to the north. The jug also shows that vineyards and wine production reached all the way to the north in ancient Egypt. Wine really was a huge deal, worthy of placing a military base here. Princess Meredaton most likely used this jug. Just like with her brother, she was born into the sun and named after it. Her name, also spelled Meredaten, meant beloved of the Aten. As the eldest daughter of Pharaoh and his queen, born right into the middle of radical religious changes, she was raised to perform the future queen's duties. From her earliest years, she walked in temples alongside her mother Nefertiti, shaking the sistrum in solemn rituals. She was there when Akhenaten established his capital city, Amarna. He clearly loved his family. Meredaton's face was etched into its stone walls more than anyone else. In every temple, in every sacred scene, her figure appears, revered. Things get foggy in history after her father passed away. The throne wobbled. King Tut was very young, only 9 years old when he had to take new duties. Meredaton seemed to have been a brief step between her father and her younger brother. She married someone called Smenkhkare. History isn't even sure who that mysterious man was. Could have been a puppet, a phantom king in a crumbling dynasty. May have even been her brother. Whatever the truth was, these two took power and ruled together for a while. Meredaton got the title of the Great Royal Wife, a title of immense power. But Smenkhkare was a very short-lived ruler. He passed away just in about a year. There are some speculations among historians that Meredaton was the actual ruler, the informal female pharaoh, because her brother was too young. Some theories say that she raised Tutankhamun and became a sort of queen regent, mentoring the child who would be used to restore the old order. But all this is unconfirmed. It's very hard for historians to find information about that time because the Amarna period was later condemned. The successors wanted to wipe away Akhenaten's heresy and everything attached to it. This included Merenptah. So even if she ruled, even if she mothered Tut, they tried to bury her in the sands of history. In any case, perhaps this new uncovered city will tell us more about the mysteries of the Amarna period, one of the most chaotic periods of ancient Egypt.
If there's a question that still baffles archaeologists to this day, it's this one. How did the ancient Egyptians build those magnificent pyramids? As far as we know today, their resources were quite limited, especially in terms of tools and building materials. We still don't have a fully satisfying answer, but hey, we've got some pretty amazing theories worth considering. The leading contender among these theories involves the clever Egyptians employing a sneaky strategy. Now picture this. They constructed a slanted and curving mound made of bricks, earth, and sand encircling the pyramid to be. As the pyramid grew taller and taller, they simply increased the height and length of this wacky structure. It's like they were playing an ancient game of Jenga. Now, how did they get those massive stone blocks up there? Well, according to the legendary ancient Greek historian Herodotus, they used sleds, rollers, and levers. It sounds like they turned construction into a supersized game of tug-of-war. And guess what? Herodotus also claimed that the Great Pyramid, the one from Giza, the granddaddy of them all, took a whopping 20 years to build. There's more. Herodotus also dropped a mind-boggling number on us. 100,000 men were supposedly involved in this pyramid extravaganza. Did they hire the entire Egyptian population? Well, it might not be as far-fetched as it sounds. These men were probably mostly farmers, so they probably focused on the pyramids when there wasn't much work to be done in the fields. Like during the flood season of the Nile River. Obviously, specialists in the archaeological community had something to add to this theory. By the late 20th century, they discovered some evidence that suggests the workforce might have been smaller and more permanent than previously thought. Instead of a massive army of 100,000 pyramid builders, they proposed that a modest crew of around 20,000 workers, accompanied by support personnel like bakers, physicians, and even spiritual leaders, could have gotten the job done. There was also this theory that claimed that the pyramids were actually built from the top downward. It suggested that these colossal structures were nothing more than isolated hills used as quarries. The stones were supposedly drawn from these hills, and over time, competing engineers took charge and transformed them into the iconic pyramids we know today. Now, before you dismiss this theory as a wild fantasy, some folks thought it wasn't completely crazy. After all, there are instances where isolated hills exist, so maybe this theory had a tiny glimmer of truth. Whether it involved ramp building or ingenious work schedules, one thing is clear. Those pyramids have definitely left their mark on history and on our imaginations. Now, speaking of ancient Egyptian mysteries, there's this gigantic unfinished obelisk sitting in ancient Egypt, and scientists are trying to figure out how it was shaped. Now, some people suggest that our industrious ancestors used handheld pounders to get the job done. One expert has a different take on the matter, though. He argues that if we take a closer look at the pattern left behind by the shaping tool, we'll notice something peculiar. The walls of the trenches surrounding the obelisk display a neat and even pattern, which is pretty unlikely if they were pounded away by mere mortal hands. According to this expert, those horizontal striations are usually the result of a tool that takes breaks while removing material, leaving its mark on the surface. But wait, there's more. Imagine the tool being rocked back and forth against the trench walls, clearing away the waste to keep the trench from narrowing. Well, in that case, the tool might have left some funky horizontal striations where it was pressed against the sidewall. This sounds like some fancy technology at play, don't you think? And guess what? The dynastic Egyptians probably didn't have access to that kind of know-how. Another famous Egyptologist from way back also uncovered a bunch of core drills during his adventures. Although the actual drill bits are missing, his collection houses these particular core remnants made of limestone, alabaster, and even granite. These constructions aren't the only amazing thing the ancient Egyptians left behind, though. As it turns out, the Egyptians were the genius minds behind the creation of the handheld mirror. Yeah, that little mirror you use every day to check yourself out. But here's the twist. These mirrors are like pieces of art. They were decorated with inscriptions and figures. But that's not all. The Egyptians had a serious concern with their appearance. They knew the importance of personal hygiene and looking fabulous. So, in their quest for pearly whites, they invented toothbrushes and toothpaste. Dental problems were pretty common back then, and their smiles weren't exactly all white. Dentistry wasn't their strongest suit, you see. Maybe their minds were distracted by all that pyramid building. So that doesn't mean those ancient toothpaste recipes weren't amazing. One delightful concoction included rock salt, mint, dried iris petals, and pepper. Some brave dentists in the 21st century tried it out, and it worked pretty well. Ground-up ash was also used in another recipe to create a tooth cleansing paste. Mint was missing, so that didn't do much for their breath. That's when the genius Egyptians came up with the world's first breath mints. They made tablets from heated spices like cinnamon, and they mixed it with honey. Now, let's shift gears to home decor, Egyptian style. They surely took ornamentation to the next level. While the concept of decorating furniture started in Mesopotamia, the Egyptians cranked it up a notch. They went all out with different colors of ink and even developed various weights of paper. Oh, and let's not forget about those cute little area rugs we all have in our homes today. Guess who came up with the idea? Yep, the Egyptians. They used the versatile papyrus plant to make those cozy rugs. And speaking of trends, the Egyptians loved their knickknacks. They had an assortment of small figurines in the shapes of cats, dogs, and people. These statues were made from various materials, like simple sun-dried mud to the ultimate bling of gold. It all depended on how loaded you were. The Egyptians were also all about farming, and they knew that clean water was crucial for their crops and animals. That's why they came up with some nifty inventions and techniques to make sure their land was fertile and their plants were happy. First off, they had the genius idea of using ox-drawn plows. They had two types of plows, heavy and light. The heavy plow would strut its stuff, cutting deep furrows in the soil, while the lighter plow followed behind, fluffing up the earth. But they didn't stop there. After plowing, the Egyptians would break up clumps of soil and sow the rows with seeds. To give those seeds a good old squish into the furrows, they'd march their livestock across the field, effectively closing up the furrows. But hey, all that hard work would be pointless if their seeds were as dry as the Sahara. That's where irrigation comes into play. The Egyptians were so good at it that other cultures, like the Greeks and Romans, couldn't help but copy their techniques. Now let's switch gears and talk about the marvelous architecture of ancient Egypt. These folks weren't just skilled farmers, they were also architectural maestros. They built these fancy canals to carry water to farms and villages, and boy, did they know how to make those canals look pretty. Just imagine strolling along a canal lined with ornate structures. The pharaoh Ramesses the Great was quite the overachiever when it came to construction. One of his mind-blowing creations was the construction located at Abu Simbel. This building was designed so that twice a year, the sun would shine directly into it and illuminate the statues of Ramesses. And let's not forget about the corbelled arch. Without this architectural gem, we'd be missing out on some mind-boggling structures like the Great Pyramid. The Egyptians knew how to make things stand tall and proud, thanks to their engineering and construction wizardry. They built grand halls and inner sanctums that make your jaw drop. And some of these temples doubled as astronomical observatories. Hey, I bet you didn't know that trees used to grow in the middle of Egypt's barren, sun-roasted Sinai Desert. It's true. If you can't picture it, I don't blame you. But archaeologists have recently stumbled upon a tree-lined boulevard. Yep, an actual green avenue, leading to a massive ancient fortress. No, this isn't some mirage or an overactive imagination, although I do have one. But it's turning our ideas of ancient Egyptian desert life upside down. Let's rewind a bit. The site in question is called Tel Abu Saifi, located in the northern part of the Sinai Peninsula. For a long time, it was known as a dusty archaeological footnote, the home of ruins from the Ptolemaic and Roman periods. You know, the era after Alexander the Great swaggered through Egypt and the Roman Empire called dibs. But recently, Egypt's Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities decided to give it a fresh dig, and what they found out turned to be more than just a forgotten outpost. We're talking about a full-on military fortress with defensive trenches, paved roads, lime kilns, barracks for soldiers, and even room for their families. A whole bunch of living quarters right in the middle of a desert doesn't feel very homey until you remember our star, the unexpected Green Avenue. This road was over 300 feet long and 36 feet wide, as long as an American football field, paved with limestone slabs and lined with more than 500 clay planting pits. These weren't for show, they held actual trees, creating a shaded tree-line entrance straight to the fortress. Imagine walking through that, the sun blazing overhead, and suddenly, blessed shade. Ooh. Now, that's not just a grand entrance, that's an ancient red carpet, or maybe a green one. But this wasn't about curb appeal. The existence of hundreds of trees in a desert landscape over 2,000 years ago tells us something big. You see, the Ptolemaic Egyptians weren't simply good at building monuments, they were also masters of water management. In a place where rainfall is rarer than a selfie with a pharaoh, they somehow found a way to grow rows of trees. Now, let that sink in. To irrigate that many trees in a desert, they must have had a sophisticated irrigation or water transport system, something capable of moving and distributing water efficiently in this harsh climate. Maybe they channeled groundwater, or maybe they captured seasonal rain, or maybe ancient sprinkler systems. Okay, maybe not that fancy. But still, it's clear they were ahead of their time. Here's the thing, we already know the Egyptians mastered water control. They harnessed the Nile with ditches and canals to feed distant fields. So irrigation wasn't exactly a mystery to them. They had the skills and the knowledge. And sure, scientists still debate what the Sinai climate was like 2,000 years ago. But many believe it may have once been greener. After all, take one look at those dramatic mountains and rocky landscapes, shaped and sculpted as if by brute force of ancient rivers. And it's hard not to think that water once played a bigger role out there. Plus, archaeologists have found tons of evidence showing that Ptolemaic Egyptians cultivated fruits, vines, and trees on a large scale. In other words, growing a forest in a desert might feel wild to us, but to them, it was just another Tuesday. And now, this Green Avenue is making archaeologists wonder, what if similar irrigation systems were used elsewhere, say for transporting the enormous stones used to build the pyramids? There's already a theory that ancient rivers or human-made canals helped move those stones. And the Tel Abu Saifi discovery? Well, it might just be the missing puzzle piece. This isn't just a dream. Back then, rivers were like highways, power grids, and cargo trains of the ancient world, all rolled into one. Egyptians used them for everything – irrigating crops, trading goods, powering industry, and even mobilizing for war. If you were doing something important, odds are it involved a river. But wait, it gets even better. Excavations revealed deep defensive trenches, like ancient moats, dug more than 6 feet deep around the fortress. Those weren't just muddy ditches. They were part of an elaborate defense system designed to be filled or bridged to control access. Think of it as ancient Egypt's version of a retractable security gate, minus the hydraulics. And while the trenches were keeping intruders out, life inside the fortress was bustling. Remember how we said archaeologists had found military housing units? It turns out soldiers might have lived there with their families. So this wasn't just a barracks, it was a thriving community, with meals, routines, kids playing, and probably a whole lot of ancient gossip flying around the dinner table. In addition to all the military stuff, researchers found 4 massive lime kilns used to produce quicklime, an essential ingredient for making construction mortar. These kilns are a big deal because they suggest that during the later Roman period, Tel Abu Saifi turned into an industrial hub. It was like the Home Depot of ancient Egypt, churning out materials to build and repair buildings. But here's where the plot thickens. Underneath all of this, beneath the roads, the trenches, the kilns, archaeologists found the corners of an even older structure, a mystery building. Could it be the remains of a third, much older fortress? or an ancient cemetery or lost city? Nobody knows yet, but one thing's clear: this story isn't over. Honestly, this might be the coolest archaeological cliffhanger of the decade. So, what does this all mean? Well, for starters, it challenges everything we assumed about desert life in ancient Egypt. For the longest time, deserts were thought of as natural barriers, dry, deadly, and empty. But this find suggests that the desert might have once been green and full of life, not because the climate was dramatically different, but because the Egyptians were incredibly good at bending the environment to their will. They didn't just survive in the desert, they transformed it. It also adds fuel to the fire in the age-old debate about ancient Egyptian tech. If they could build a fortress with tree-lined roads, moats, irrigation, and industry in the middle of the Sinai, is it really such a stretch to imagine they could engineer water channels to move pyramid stones? Forget the Ancient Aliens TV show. Sure, it's entertaining, I'll give you that, but it makes us forget something crucial. Those people were brilliant. A lot of what we call modern technology is recycled ancient ingenuity. And who knows how much knowledge we've lost over time. Meanwhile, the dig continues. Scientists are now mapping the entire Tel Abu Saifi site, trying to piece together how all the structures connect. Some want to analyze soil samples to find traces of old tree roots and maybe even figure out what kinds of trees once grew there. Imagine if they were date palms. We might be looking at the world's oldest snack lane. You already know that the implications of the discoveries don't stop with history books, right? This kind of discovery has modern relevance too. Our world is going through a lot of change, with crazy weather and huge heat waves. So maybe we should be asking, what can we learn from ancient civilizations that once made the desert bloom? If nothing else, Tel Abu Saifi reminds us that the ancient Egyptians were more than just pharaohs, pyramids, and mummies. They were visionary planners, eco-architects, and straight-up problem solvers. They didn't wait for nature to hand them what they needed. They engineered it. And thanks to discoveries like this, we're getting a clearer picture of just how advanced and, frankly, how cool ancient Egyptian civilization really was. So next time someone tells you deserts are just empty wastelands, you can hit them with this fun fact. Over 2,000 years ago, in the heart of the Sinai Desert, there was a fortress with a tree-lined avenue, moats, military housing, an industrial center, and even a secret underground structure. Take that, sand dunes! Who knows what else is still buried out there, waiting to rewrite history?
Thousands of years ago, way before cranes, engines, or electricity, the ancient Egyptians pulled off one of the greatest architectural feats ever: the pyramids. The massive stone blocks, some weighing as much as a Range Rover, sitting at a height of over 200 feet, seemed so unreal that many even believed ETs helped build them. But new research shows the secret was actually right here on Earth. The Egyptians probably used a giant ancient water elevator to move those heavy stones for their very first pyramid, the Step Pyramid of Djoser, around 4,700 years ago. Now, the first question that comes to mind is, where did they find such huge amounts of water to run this construction in the middle of the desert? Some studies say that the Sahara Desert had more regular rainfall thousands of years ago than it does today. So, the landscape resembled a savanna, not a desert. So it was possible there was enough natural water to support the hydraulic lift. Researchers found deep vertical shafts inside the first stone pyramid. They used a computer model that had info about the pyramid's remaining inside parts and the underground tunnels at the site. The team also used high-resolution satellite pictures of the area to include the amount of rainfall from the past in their research. It looks like the Egyptians would place a heavy stone block on top of a floating wooden platform, kind of like a raft, then slowly fill the shaft with water, and the rising water would lift the platform and the stone upwards. Sort of like an ancient elevator in action. This cool process is called hydraulic lifting. And it's very similar to how some modern machinery works. But when the Egyptians used it, if they ever did, they would have had to do it with the most basic tools and a really advanced understanding of how water behaves. They would have to carefully control the amount of water added to each shaft to raise the stone blocks gradually and stop at the desired level to move the stones into place. The scientists now want to find out if it was the first major system of this kind, or if someone had used it before the Egyptians. Now, not all archaeologists fully agree with this idea. Some point out there's no direct evidence like writings or diagrams from that time that would prove the Egyptians actually used a hydraulic lift system, whether or not they actually used this exact method. One thing is clear. The people who built the step pyramid were geniuses in their own right. They figured out how to move massive stones all the way to the top of the pyramid with incredible precision, and used techniques that still impress scientists today. West of the pyramid, archaeologists found some evidence of a human-made lake or reservoir. They believe the Egyptians may have created this temporary lake and used channels or canals to move the water toward the pyramid. The pyramid itself may have been surrounded by a moat that helped direct water into these vertical shafts. There's even an enormous stone structure nearby, which could have acted like a dam. It stored and filtered water in the amounts they needed. In fact, scientists have discovered that 31 pyramids are likely to have been built along a long-lost ancient branch of the River Nile. It is now hidden under desert and farmland. For many years, archaeologists have thought that ancient Egyptians must have used a nearby waterway to transport materials, equipment, people, and whatever else they needed to build the pyramids on the river. But up until recently, they weren't certain of the location, shape, size, or proximity of this waterway to the site of the pyramids. They used radar satellite imagery, historical maps, geophysical surveys, and sediment coring to map the river branch. The scientists believe that a huge drought and sandstorms buried it thousands of years ago. They managed to go below the surface of the sand and get images of some hidden features, thanks to radar technology. The team found hidden rivers and ancient structures running at the foothills of where most of the ancient Egyptian pyramids lie. The discovery of this extinct river branch could explain why there are so many pyramids between Gaza and Lich in what is now an inhospitable area of the Sahara Desert. And if it wasn't cool enough, the area seems to have had a kind of water filtration system. Looks like they built it using a series of stone compartments that look surprisingly similar to modern water treatment plants. So, the Egyptians probably weren't just filling up the shafts with any water. They may have been managing and purifying it. They wanted to make sure it was clean and flowing in the right amounts, not to damage the pyramid or flood the area. Alright, water transportation is a complex issue. But even the most basic things, like how many sides the Great Pyramid of Giza has, can still surprise us. It's not 4, as you might logically conclude. It's not even 5 or 3, but 8. In 1926, a British pilot flew over the pyramid and took photos from above, and only then officially confirmed it. From that high-up view, he noticed that each of the pyramid's 4 faces is slightly indented down the middle, from top to bottom. These shallow inward dips make each face split into 2 halves, turning the pyramid into something more like an octagon. That indentation is so subtle you'd never see it standing next to the pyramid, but from the air, it becomes obvious. This odd shape may have actually helped keep the pyramid stable for over 4,500 years. The special inward-sloping design, plus a super strong base, could have helped it survive all kinds of natural disasters, like earthquakes, heavy rains, and constant pressure from its own massive weight. The pyramid has likely faced over 500 severe rainstorms in its lifetime, and thanks to its design, the pyramid's angled stone layers may have actually gotten stronger over time, kind of like how a screw tightens when you turn it. If the pyramid had been built with totally flat and level stone layers, it might have started to fall apart instead. The latest news from the pyramids is that there could be a massive ancient city hidden deep beneath them. 2 scientists announced that they used a new method to read data from a technology called synthetic aperture radar, SAR. It's kind of like X-ray vision for the ground, and satellites normally use it to look beneath Earth's surface. So they say that with this cool tech, they managed to spot giant structures over a mile underground, directly beneath the Pyramid of Khafra at Giza. The scientists found 8 deep shafts surrounded by spiral paths, all leading to 2 enormous cube-shaped chambers, each one almost 300 feet wide. There are 5 more structures above the shafts, all connected by tunnels. All this might be part of a prehistoric underground city or even an ancient power station. The idea isn't new. A long time ago, the ancient Greek historian Herodotus already talked about hidden chambers under the pyramids. During the Middle Ages and the Renaissance, similar rumors popped up again. Then, in the 20th century, an American psychic claimed there was a hall of records buried under Giza. This new case is different because the people who announced it have real scientific backgrounds, hold doctorates, and claim to have invented a new type of scanning method. But still, many experts are skeptical about this finding. No one has officially proved or tested this new technology that they rely on. They base their reconstructions on imaginative guesses and not hard evidence. And most importantly, the claims don't fit with what archaeologists already know about the area from actual excavations. So until there's solid, peer-reviewed evidence, the idea of a lost city under the pyramids will remain just an idea. Scientists have discovered a never-before-seen pyramid immersed in the sands of Judea. After a little digging, they discovered that it held treasures that had been untouched for over 2 millennia and historical secrets that we can only now access. At the Zohar Fortress site, 2,600 feet above the Dead Sea, archaeologists were searching for manuscripts that would provide new information about the history of the site. The excavation was originally part of a long-standing campaign launched by the authorities. Its goal was to protect the sites from looting and unauthorized excavations. What they didn't expect was to find a pyramid-shaped structure built on top of a hill, made of hand-cut stones, each weighing hundreds of pounds. At first, the experts thought it was just a tomb, but they soon noticed the shape of the original walls and understood that the mound was a construction. They immediately realized that someone had dug into the top of the structure, probably looters who had spotted something valuable there. Luckily, most of the structure was still buried in sand, so the most valuable finds were hidden from sight. In the first week of excavation, volunteers found fragments of papyrus, bronze vases, and even ancient furniture, which were exceptionally well preserved. The desert climate had been a great ally in preserving those artifacts over the millennia. With little humidity in the air, mold cannot form. So, organic materials such as wood and fibers are protected from cracking and deformation. Hypotheses suggested that the pyramid had been built during the First Temple period. However, new discoveries have shown that it's more recent, from the Hellenistic period. Considering this and the fact that the structure dates back 2,200 years, it's believed that it probably appeared shortly after the death of Alexander the Great, the famous ancient Greek king of Macedonia. At that time, his generals divided the former Seleucid Empire. Ptolemy took control of Egypt and the surrounding regions, including the Dead Sea area, while Seleucus took control of the north, which is now part of the Middle East. It's still not known for sure whether the pyramid was built under the rule of the Ptolemaics or the Seleucids. Both Ptolemaic coins and coins from the Seleucid kingdom have been found at the site. Even so, many scholars believe it was built when the region was under Ptolemaic control. Evidence also suggests that the building, despite its longevity, collapsed at some point. But that's not why it was abandoned by the ancient Egyptians, which begs the question of what purpose it was built for. Some believe it was used as a tomb due to its picturesque location on top of a hill. Others believed it may have served as a historical monument. However, one of the strongest theories is that the pyramid was a guard tower, protecting an important trade route along which salt and bitumen resources from the Dead Sea were transported to coastal ports. They also believe it may have been used by Ptolemaic officials to collect taxes from travelers. It would be something equivalent to our modern-day toll booths, or even port inspection agencies. Although the contents of the papyrus documents remain a mystery, it seems very likely they were written using the Greek alphabet, and some experts believe that they may have been tax documents, which would make perfect sense, given the theory that the pyramid was a guard tower.
The team calls it a fascinating historical mystery that the dig is helping to unravel, but the find is just a grain of sand in an entire desert. The dig is part of a larger project that's been going on for a long time. And in the last 8 years alone, it has scanned 111 miles of desert cliffs and identified approximately 900 caves within that radius. Using rappelling equipment, advanced technology, and specialized documentation methods, archaeologists discovered thousands of rare items, such as hidden scrolls, woodworking tools, carpets, leather goods, and even treasures. For them, the Judean desert is an ancient vault just waiting to be opened to reveal its secrets. A few years before they found the mysterious pyramid, they discovered a cave that had served as a refuge for Jewish rebels almost 1900 years ago. The site was about 262 feet from the top of a cliff, and because of its difficult access, it hadn't been explored yet. Inside, they found previously unpublished fragments of the Dead Sea Scrolls that contained religious passages written in Greek. 11 lines of text were reconstructed thanks to the good condition of the papyri. So, scientists were able to identify their etymological content. Probably the best thing, there was no problem with preservation. Thanks to the dry and hot conditions of the desert, the artifacts were in impeccable condition. And there were other historical treasures there. The teams found rare coins, a partially mummified skeleton over 6,000 years old, with skin, tendons, and even strands of hair. There was also a giant basket made of plant fibers, considered the oldest in the world, more than 10,000 years old. With a capacity of up to 26 gallons, it was made about 1,000 years before the invention of ceramics. Speaking of historical treasures, there's another one that has caught the attention of the scientific community. A small piece of fabric that is around 3,800 years old. But it's more than just simple fabric. Dyed with the rare scarlet paint mentioned many times in ancient religious texts, this find is the oldest known evidence of fabric painted with a dye made from insects, known as scarlet worms. This is where the intense red hue comes from. It was a highly valued color, like royal blue and purple, because those insects lived in oak trees and could only be harvested for a short period during the year. So, those dyes were reserved for sacred fabrics, such as priests' clothes, marking status and religious importance. And although this discovery had great significance for archaeology, its size was actually tiny, measuring less than 1 inch. The fragment was discovered in 2016 during excavations in the so-called Cave of Skulls, but it's not known exactly how this fabric got there. According to experts, it's evidence that people knew how to dye wool fibers already 3,800 years ago or so. It also provides us with proof that the ancient textile industry already used animals at about the same time people began to create written sources. Fabrics painted using this type of dye were recorded in more recent periods. But what makes this piece really special is the fact that it is much older than any other. Another important discovery was made in 1980, when scientists found a seed that was over 1,000 years old, which turned into a mysterious tree named Sheba. They spent 14 years cultivating this plant, which is now about 10 feet tall, only to discover later that it could belong to an extinct lineage of trees that had grown in the region. The seed dates back to a period between 993 and 1202 CE, and they believe that Sheba may be a biblical tree commonly associated with healing. Although it's not been possible to identify the exact species, since the tree hasn't flowered, we know that it belongs to the genus Commiphora, which is related to famous African plants, such as the myrrh tree. But time has revealed something even more special. Its leaves and resins are rich in compounds that have medicinal, antioxidant, and even skin-soothing properties. This means that the tree may represent a forgotten lineage whose resin had medicinal value and was mentioned in ancient texts. This brings to light how ancient people dealt with botanical medicine.
One of the most unexplored and mysterious places on Earth is located in plain sight. It's one of the most majestic monuments of humankind. The wonder of the ancient world hides a secret that scientists and archaeologists still can't solve. This is the Great Sphinx of Giza in Egypt. The huge sculpture of a lion with a human head was carved out of rock about 4,500 years ago. Scientists still don't know the exact date of its creation and are also unaware of who built it and what for. There are many assumptions and theories, but none of them has been confirmed. Most people have seen this majestic sculpture either in photographs or in reality, but almost no one knows what's hidden underneath it. The statue of the Sphinx was carved from a single piece of limestone. It was painted. The remains of color pigment on the surface prove this. In the distant past, the Sphinx looked much brighter and more colorful than what we see now. But even after thousands of years, its greatness hasn't diminished. And by the way, Sphinx is not the real name. It was invented by the Greeks about 100 years or more after its creation. Initially, the Egyptians called the statue Hor-em-Akhet. There are many legends and theories saying the Sphinx is there for a reason. It's like a watchdog that guards the tomb of the pharaoh and the secrets of ancient Egypt. These legends become more plausible when archaeologists discovered hidden entrances at the feet of the Sphinx. They believe that these secret passages are the beginning of the tunnels leading to the halls with treasures. You can find a lot of stories on the internet that claim the Sphinx hides the Hall of Records, a repository filled with ancient and secret knowledge. One of the main artifacts of this repository is supposed to be the records of the ancient mythical state of Atlantis. According to legends, the entire library from this city was moved under the Sphinx. The entrance to this library must be located next to the Sphinx's right paw. Many archaeologists tried to find this entrance, but came away empty-handed. Also, there are many images with detailed diagrams of the underground city that consists of a network of tunnels and chambers under the Sphinx. Someone says there are structures as tall as 12-story buildings hiding underground, but there's no evidence of this. Archaeologists, even after millennia, continue to explore the mysterious sculpture. At the same time, many Egyptians don't want to learn more about the Sphinx. They're terrified of awakening something supernatural. In 1998, scientists discovered tunnels leading to empty caves under the Sphinx. They found evidence of earlier excavations there. It's quite possible that someone managed to find the treasures and take them away. Some people believe Egyptians found some kind of artifact under the Sphinx that has the power of unknown advanced technologies. The artifact is so powerful that it can change the course of history. Of course, most theories are just fairy tales of conspiracy fans, but it's a confirmed fact that the Sphinx hides a system of caves and rooms. There are so many rumors surrounding the Sphinx that it's impossible to understand what's true and what's false. In any case, it's difficult and dangerous to study the sculpture because active excavations can destroy it. And then the entrance to the underground rooms can get blocked by rocks and lost forever. Also, further exploration requires a lot of money, and financing is not always easy to find. But the main reason? It's too risky. There's no guarantee that people will be able to get out of the underground labyrinths. For these reasons, scientists and archaeologists have been exploring this majestic structure for so long. Another famous architectural monument with a secret is Mount Rushmore in South Dakota. Everyone admires the images of the US presidents' faces carved into the rock, but few people know that there's a secret room hidden behind the head of Abraham Lincoln. The architect of Mount Rushmore wanted to carve slabs on the rock with the record of the main stages of the country's history. But his plan was too complicated to carry out. Then he was offered to implement it on a much smaller scale, to build a secret room inside the mountain. The idea was to save this knowledge so that future generations will always remember the history of their country. Unfortunately, the architect didn't have time to finish his work. the construction stopped for several decades. But in the late 90s, the project was resumed. Porcelain enamel panels depicting the history of the US were placed in the room. It's possible that these plates will be stored there forever. But people can't see them, at least for now. The room is inaccessible to tourists as it's too difficult to get inside. Another secret room is located in the Empire State Building. More precisely, it's not even a room, but a place where you can take cool photos. Almost all tourists gather on the observation deck of the 86th floor to enjoy a stunning view of Manhattan. But there's another deck with panoramic windows on the 102nd floor. There are way fewer people there because almost no one knows about that place. Fortunately, access to this deck is open to everyone. You probably won't have to wait in line for a long time to take a photo. You'll feel special because you're in such a secret place where there are almost no people. But the coolest place is even higher, on the 103rd floor. This is a spacious observation deck where celebrities get their photographs taken. It's not a public place, but if you know the right people, you can get there. There are almost no security measures on the site. Only a low ledge between you and an abyss. That's why crowds of people are forbidden from coming here. It's not so easy to get there, and you're unlikely to succeed without a guide. First, you need to choose the right elevator that will take you there. Then you'll go through several engineering rooms filled with pipes, electrical panels, and other technical stuff. The final part of your way is a set of stairs inside a tiny corridor. And here you are, at the top of New York. Now we're in Paris. See the Eiffel Tower? Inside it, there are restaurants and observation decks. But if you try hard, you can find a secret apartment. Now it's a museum, but it was built so that people could live in it. The architect of the tower, Gustav Eiffel, created this apartment in 1889 for himself. It's almost at the very top of the Eiffel Tower. Imagine what a beautiful view he observed every day. He was the first and only tenant. No one else could gain access to this place. When the architect passed away, the apartment remained empty for a long time. Only recently, they restored it and turned it into a museum. Inside, the epoch of the last century is recreated. They even put wax figures of Gustav Eiffel, his daughter, and the American inventor Thomas Edison inside the room. This place is filled with an endless stream of passengers, office workers running late, visitors from other cities, noise, and train whistles. At Grand Central Station in New York, among all these sounds, you can hear the sound of a ball hitting a racket, if you're in the right place. A real tennis court is hidden inside New York Central Station. It belongs to a tennis club that arranges corporate games for employees of many companies. The club was opened in the 60s. Now we're moving to London, Charing Cross Road. It isn't easy to find one secret place here. To do this, you need to look carefully at your feet. Do you see these sewer grates in the asphalt? Inside them, you can notice two signs with the name Little Compton Street. Yeah, there's another street right below you. It disappeared from all maps at the end of the 19th century. Charing Cross Road was built over it. The identification signs that you see are part of old engineering tunnels. There's another interesting place in London. It's located in the southeast corner of Trafalgar Square. At first glance, it looks like a thick lamppost, but there are too many tourists walking around. You come closer and realize that one person can easily fit inside the post. The lamppost belongs not to an electrician, but to a police officer. Yeah, this is the smallest police station in the world. It was built in the 1930s and used as a watch post. Officers had to sit there one by one and watch Trafalgar Square. That always attracted a lot of pickpockets and all kinds of other criminals.